Relax. Hello, everybody.
How's it going?
Richard, how the devil are you?
Good. We did a thing. We plugged things into other things, and finally, stuff went onto internets. It's great. I love that kind
Things
of
got plugged in and things into things, and then things happened.
It's like my teacher told me, if you do it right, it works.
How are you? Are you good?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Just, I get to like be with the family, then walk into the studio and make music. So come on, man. That's like the best thing over and over and over.
I've
Uh,
got to say, all of your studios you've had, like your previous one and this one here, are all absolutely beautiful.
oh man, thank you. That actually means a lot because we're really trying over here.
But what's interesting is like, with the exception of us doing videos together,
hmm
I mean, you must have clients come over, but probably I would guess like most people, you're most of the time you're mixing remotely. So, you what I'm trying to say, I'm sure other people can understand is you put a lot of time and energy into making things look great and sound great, regardless of the fact that it's only you in there in the room on your own most of the time. It's pretty amazing.
Actually, yeah, there's actually two thoughts about that. Actually, the one thought is
Inspiration?
you just said, like, I'm spending my time, my life literally in this box, right?
Yeah.
So the box better be a good box because you want to be inspired by your surroundings. You want to go to work and go like, oh, I'm gonna crush this today. And
Wow.
um, and the other thing is, and that's actually kind of funny. A good friend of mine, his name is Matt Hennessy. He's in Chicago. He runs a studio called VSOP, and it's very much in the Grammy organization. And I told him, and I was like, that we're building the studio, and I'm like, ah, man, I think I went a little overkill. And he's like, no, 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 this is just the exact right amount of kill. And I was like, here's the telephone number of my wife and my accountant. They need to hear that. No, it
Yep.
is that though. It is, and then when they do come by, for instance, actually a band was here 3 days ago. It's good to have the option, right? But I mean, as we know, most of the biggest mixers in the world are doing everything by themselves, and no one comes by. They don't want to or they can't because they're not only remote on the internet, but they're actually physically remote in other places, so it's just where we are. And if you see my handle when I type something weird into the chat, um then it says emixing.com, right? So almost 20 years now ago, maybe like 15 or so, I started emixing.com with the idea, well, I have a room that at the time was called the Green Room, was not very pretty, but was very nicely done. Bob Hodos designed it. And it was designed in a way like this whole business model is not supposed to be like you come by and we hang. The opposite. I'm kind of rather not have you come by and hang because at the time I was in an apartment, right? So it's still around, of course. Over the years, everybody did this thing, so it's not that groundbreaking
Well, your
anymore.
room is your room is a Carl Tatz room, isn't it?
It is the only one in LA.
Oh, is
Um,
it really the only one in LA?
yeah, he only has them in Nashville and a few other places around the country. But I had his tuning before in my old room, the mix house. This one is the mix manor. In the old one, I only had his tuning, and I was fell in love with it. So when I was like, "Let's do this. Why don't you build me the room like you would?" And
I
the
don't know
best
what
part,
magic he does. I
yeah,
really don't know what magic he does, and I know a lot of really incredible acoustic engineers. A
yeah.
lot. I can think of like 10 off the top of my head that all of them are incredibly talented. And his rooms still sound like some of the best rooms I've ever been in. And yeah, whatever he's doing, whatever mojo it is, it works.
It is, and I have his speakers here. It's all custom. So it's all one installation that fits to his
And his chair.
ideas. Oh, don't tell anybody. Yes, we do have two. I have two of his chairs, and I'm sitting in one right now, but I can't show you because it's not
Because
in
you're
the
sitting
camera
in.
view. Sorry about that. But
So
yeah, no,
so
I
you
am.
are full blown Carl Tatzed out.
I
Chairs,
guess I am. Like
speakers, room design.
he has all my money now. That's right.
And on
So
the back of your car, you've got CT.
oh yeah. I mean, wouldn't have it any other way. But
All right.
there's some fit. He and I hear things similarly. So I am actually when we sat down and finally tuned this room after building it, There was obviously a moment I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Will this sound good? And then within 10 seconds, I'm like, ah, okay, I'm home. We did it. It's a joy. It's a joy.
All right. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes
Yeah.
of the course. Now, um, the band is it Limon? Limon? Is that
Limon
correct?
Limon. Yeah.
Limon
They're,
Limon. Okay.
they're
I
from
just
LA.
make sure.
It's a made up
Oh,
French. They are actually from LA.
oh, they're from LA with the. I thought they were French.
No. I actually do not know why that's their name. We will have to ask them.
Okay. So a couple of things I think that were interesting and were very useful for people
Hmm.
is that the multi-tracks that you were given to mix, that you did on the mix breakdown, had a lot of processing on them.
Hmm.
They were already heavily processed. And so I've got some mixed feedback. A lot of people, of course, were like, wow, this is great because this is what they get. And to be honest, it is very common now for people to bake in stuff and then send it to you. I recently worked with a classic rock band who will remain nameless, and they sent me drum tracks, and I was like, I really need, there's too much compression and EQ and verb put on this snare. And they were like, well, because it's a blend of this, this, and this. And I was like, well, can you give me the original things? They're like, no, because what they'd done is they'd blended it all together, put in a sample lightly, and had that trigger the reverb, put it all in together, all of which is okay, except they then edited it
Oh, yeah.
afterwards. So even if I'd gone back to the raw tracks, none of the arrangement was the same anymore. None of like sections. So there was no raw tracks for me to work with.
Yeah.
So I think it's fantastic to for you to mix a track that has those same kind of baked in things.
Yeah, and it literally came from two places. And one thing you would probably like a lot. I actually just got the Soul vinyl from Peter Gabriel, right? But is Big Time on that record? I think it is, right? Maybe. So Big Time was a huge record in the, I don't know, 1990, 1985, I don't know, something like that. And I actually at one point saw the multi-track of that. Multi-tracks do exist on the planet Earth these days that something you can find. And I was actually amazed, like basically coming up in the early 2000s to mid 2010s, we were still under the impression, okay, well, here's a kick drum mic, here's a snare drum mic, here's a guitar mic, maybe there's a 57 and a 421, it's all separate and this and that and the other. And we thought that was normal or at least possible because I had unlimited tracks, basically. But I saw this multi-track and I was like, shit, sorry. Every single every single track on there, and it was like 12 tracks or maybe 14 tracks, it was mono tracks, but it was very processed, very engineered, very much like we wanted this way. We made a sound. We didn't just capture a recording through a preamp and then decide we wanted to do that later. That was like the first part where I was like, wait a second, isn't it really, really well recorded multi-track with some idea at the source? Isn't that very close to a stem already? And to be perfectly honest, when I pushed up the faders on that song, basically all of the faders at roughly zero made up the final mix anyway. I mean, plus minus a little bit. So it's not a new idea to start from stems or something that is already processed because it was that way on the multitrack. And then the other thing was I kept doing scores. I did scores for Assassin's Creed for video games, for instance. And
Amazing. Yeah,
yeah, in that world, just by definition, you get stems from
yeah,
the
yeah.
composer. Fully processed, doesn't matter what they did, that's where we're gonna start.
I think this is important to mention. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah, no, you're good.
and I've been talking about this for 10 years of doing this. The tracks are the individual tracks. Stems, people call tracks stems, but stems in the correct sense of the word is where you take multiple tracks and bounce them together. So you might have all the guitars or all the keyboards on a stereo track. So like 18 different parts, boom, stereo track. All the backgrounds, stereo track. The drum kit sometimes, stereo track. That is a stem. And I know in the world of kind of pop and hip hop, that's people just call individual tracks stems. But so what he's saying is here is like, and I agree. I think it is. It's prevalent. This is what happens. People send you bounce together tracks, and like I was illustrating a couple of minutes ago, sometimes it's all they have. because they've been passed around from different people. They've added their things, edited them, and then sent them back. And there is no original raw tracks to get to.
Yeah, and in a way, there should be no raw track. Actually,
Right.
if you had a fantastic engineer, let them do it. Let them do make a sound. Use all the EQ, all the boost, all the whatever they have, and do it. In the worst case, especially in our world today, where it's really hard to really mess something up because we have undo and digital processes, etc. Let them try. In the worst, absolute worst case, track it one more time. In the half worst case, the knob goes the other way too. You'll live, but you actually one step closer to the final intended process. So in a way, is there such a thing as a raw track? If you have a great engineer, not really. So it will sound like something, it will be processed like something, and that's just part of making your record. So I have no issue with that. I do want to say one thing that the stems I'm talking about these days do not combine sounds. So it's not all guitars. It would be all guitars separate, but post fader, post pan, post reverb. So when I put them all together at zero, they will hopefully, if they did right, be their rough mix in completeness, maybe minus overall bus compression. Oh well, that's fine. But the parts are still separately delivered, and that's important because I want musical events. I can affect musical events. My job is to affect musical events. While I don't have to re-engineer everything you started from the first day a microphone went onto the floor. I don't want that. Most clients don't want that because, to be perfectly honest, we're all somewhat smart. You cannot say like I'm creating a song and like every single decision, every EQ, every compression decision that I'm making is wrong, and now I have to scratch it all so the mixer can start from scratch. That's kind of silly, musically speaking. We are somewhere in the middle of that where the mixer goes like, okay, I know what we're going to do. We're going to go from here to here, kind of. I know how to do it. Some of your processing is in my way. Please maybe undo that, whatever. But a lot of it is like, okay, I see what you're doing. You use the something something to into the something 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 something, and it sounds great. Why would I not use that? You know? So that's
Yeah.
where the whole stem part comes from.
No, totally. Well, would you mind opening up the session and maybe talking a little bit about it? Now, for those of you, Eric, if you could put a link to the course in here, I'd really appreciate it. For those of you who want to get get the course, and those of you, I'm sure I can recognize a few names. I'm sure a few of you here already have the course. So please feel free if you've if you've mixed the tracks and you've got questions to ask them of Richard, but also, of course, just in general, ask any questions you've got. Can we? So let's open it up.
Yep, the session is already up now, so I think they're seeing it on the YouTube. I'm just scrolling funnily back and forth like I do. Um, as you see, I don't
I can
color
see it. Yeah, thank you.
everything is blue because I actually don't care what color it is. I know where stuff is. But a lot of people color code and they should if they wish, but I don't.
I do like color coding. Not that we're here to give lessons on color coding, but I personally
Yeah.
do like color coding.
It's
Yeah,
it's
but
funny, but I don't know if you can see this because of your small but at the beginning you see let's look at the let's look at the file names for a second. They will say like Vox Adlibs and then wet, right? So that's with reverb and complete whatever they did to it. They might have compressed it terribly, but that's where they were. That's more important to me to start where you were than decide immediately everything you did is crap. I don't want that. I don't have time for that. Nobody has time for that. You're just reinventing everything that and probably not as good. But then being said, that if I can, for instance, download, sorry, I'm saying this in the course. I actually have a very specific way I asked them to print it for me. One is basically as if you took your multi-track session and you just solo every track and print it out once. That's exactly a stem session one-to-one, one track per instrument, right? With wet, so with all processing, all processing and all verbs and delays. That is one set I want. I do want a dry set, but I don't mean without any don't mean without any processing, but without reverbs and delays, etc. I'm okay with somebody like compressing, EQing some, and that's the sound. I will never know if that happened at tracking or in the pre-mixing or it doesn't really matter until it sounds like a problem to me. But I could, for instance, and this we explore this in this course a lot. I think I can point out here real quick. You see where it says kick main dry? So basically, there I have on a playlist, I have the wet right
Yep.
here. And they put some crazy reverb on it, which was not even terrible. I just didn't like it, you know. So that's a moment where I'm
Right.
like, okay, cool, I see you. I see the sound. Let me just switch to the dry, which sounds the
Mhm.
same but has no tail, and then start there. And actually, they didn't even mention that. Like they didn't even mention, hey, what happened to the kick reverb on the kick? They just liked the mix. I mean, sure, there were a few there were notes. There should always be notes. I'm not afraid of notes, but it never became a process. Sorry, a problem to go to the dry tracks where I wanted it to be. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the overview. Everything is wet. Everything single thing is wet. Like if you go to a bass track, if I played that, I mean, I'm not positive, but I'm sure that it is no bass on it. Let me just sorry, no reverb on it, even though it is officially wet, right? Because they didn't use any. Let's play just a tiny bit. Very eventful part. Sorry about that. But you can see, but you can see, like if you actually, you know, if you have some experience on this, you can actually see that this track is compressed at the source, right? Like it's pretty obvious with a not too fast attack. That's why there's this little dip here. But overall, it has been leveled before. And I'm like, that's cool. If it sounds pretty good, I'll start there. Yeah.
Question.
Yes, please.
Question. Obviously, that's got to be live. At least, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can see the compression. They've got a slightly slower attack time, and then they're very aggressively compressing it. So they've got all these like ping, ping, ping,
Yep.
exaggerated attacks. That's typical. I get sent that stuff quite a lot. But the thing I'm seeing there, why a stereo track? Did they do this in Logic or something?
Oh no, I request stereo tracks. So
Okay. So
uh,
why do you request stereo tracks?
because if I said, hey, send me the keyboards in stereo and the guitars in mono and the vocals in mono and whatever, what will happen automatically is that that requirement where I say, hey, everything at zero should be the rough mix, right, will not work. They will mess it up somewhere. Something is 3 dB too loud, 2 dB too soft, it's not panned right, whatever. I rather have it in stereo. And here's the thing, I'm mixing in the box, except for I have stuff on buses, on stereo buses. I have analog stuff on stereo buses, but nothing is mono because I only have one vocal compressor. I just don't do that, you know? So to me
Right.
personally, it makes no difference if it's mono or stereo. And I will have, you will actually see this up here, vocals, right? These are all stereo tracks because this is a stereo stem, you know?
Um,
And
Eric's taking this out of the
hmm?
view of the. There we go. Back again.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
it is. It's all stereo stem because again, going back to the film composer, they would give me stereo stems as well. There's no sense for me to have mono files. I also don't do the turn stereo into mono things. I just don't do that because I have no more scarcity. I have endless compressors, endless tracks. There's 2,000 or so voices in Pro Tools these days. So it's not the
Yep.
same need anymore. If we were on an SSL, I'm with you. We want to turn stuff
Sure.
into mono and blah blah, but we're not. So it doesn't really matter. Now it's easier and more foolproof if you give me stereo files. I'm not saying you should do that or that's the only way to do it, but that's how I do it.
Right. No, I'm with you. To me, it's it is what it is. Whatever I'm given is what I work with, and I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things. And I know a lot of people ask questions, or the first thing when we give out multi-tracks is people say to me, they're like, "Well, what key's it in?" And I suppose being musical, I've never thought about that. I just know what key it's in, or I pick up a guitar and quickly
Yeah.
figure it out. Quite often, I'm given stuff almost entirely with no key, sometimes no click track, so it's not gridded to anything. So I calculate the tempo on my own. Usually takes about 4 seconds.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Just tap, 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 tap. Oh, 80. It's not that big of a deal, but I do understand. And I think my bigger point is what I'm trying to make is that we have to be aware. our job as mixers is to take tracks and make them great. And that can mean badly labeled or stereo. It can mean, all kinds of different things. And we just have to be kind of used to it. And I will say one last thing, because I'm taking away Richard's time,
Good.
is that I've had major engineers and producers send me stuff which is immaculate and perfect. I've also had major engineers, producers, and engineers send me stuff which is not organized at all. And I think that that may have been the circumstance. It might have been the fact that they're getting stuff sent to them from different directions. Who knows? You know, we we just have to be. It's our job as mixers to, Richard, obviously, is to take the stuff and make it great, whether it's got processing on it or it's not labeled properly or whatever. I mean, that's sort of our job.
It is. I do want to put one additional information on this. These
Please.
guys did this because I sent them a document saying I want this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that there's here's a problem. You might
Richard,
go on you go ahead.
Richard, can you furnish us with what your track requests are?
Maybe. Let me think about that, okay? No, 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 it's just it's nothing wrong, right? It's not a secret. I just wonder if I want that particular document in the world. You know what I mean? But let me
Yeah,
think.
but I mean, I think something that lets people know what they should be asking for is what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's not a problem. I wanted to say something like there's all I see this actually on YouTube, little videos that say how to prepare tracks for a mixer, which are fully some of them are really good. There's nothing wrong with that, except they're missing the main part, which is I don't want what another mixer maybe wants. I want what
Sure.
Richard Furch wants. So I have a
Sure.
very specific way of getting it. Now, do I get it all the time? No. Time, contact, whatever. When do I get hired and all that? Sometimes I don't get to send out my request, or nobody has time or can't find it. Of course, I take what I can if I have time, if the guys trust me, which it is like I said in the course, it's a trust between the parties working on this together, then they will they will give me what I want, especially when we have a report, and they're not like, oh, I just want to do it my way. I'm like, no, they're cool. Everybody wants to make the best record. So this is actually something I asked for. This is not accidentally what they send.
Right.
So I
Well,
wanted.
couple of things.
Yeah,
So,
please.
first of all, everybody, we're going to give away a couple of Richard's courses. So, what I'll do is I'll ask you a question, and just answer it, and then Eric at random will scroll through and just choose somebody, and then he will send you a copy of the course. And if you've already got this course, which I'm sure a handful of you here, maybe quite a few of you have already done, we can send you the other Richard course. So let me ask a question quickly in the background, and we'll give you a few minutes to answer. And this is one of those everybody's right ones. So um, if you only had one plugin, everybody, what is your favorite plugin? What's the one plugin you cannot mix without? I'll tell you what mine is. I have two that, as long as I have these two plugins, you can give me any other company's plugins and I'll make it work. And mine is RBass. I love RBass and MV2. Those two plugins, and then any stock plugins, and I can make it sound like a record. Anyway, Eric, at random, choose somebody in a couple of minutes. So please, everybody, do that. And of course, while you're here, can you hit the like button? I'd really like it. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. So, Richard, I want to ask you dumb questions,
Please.
because these are the questions. You got this track. Presumably, they sent you a rough mix, as you said, like a faders up mix. Yeah.
Well, it's not just a phase up with whatever they're listening to last is what I
Right.
need.
Okay. So what they listened to last. So with this song in particular, or the answer might be typically, normally, where would you and where did you start on this? And why? Why did you start at that place?
You mean like process, what
When
instrument
did you
group?
start mixing first? What did you go to first?
Oh, okay, I see.
What was
Yeah.
the first thing you tackled, and why did you tackle that first?
I can tell you that. So there's two big places I would go first. One is either the drums, and the other part is either the vocals. That's where I would start. I do know I start from the drums, and I'll tell you why. Um,
Yep.
I feel overall in mixing, the drums most of the time need the most engineering of all sources that you have. Like a guitar is a guitar, a keyboard is a guitar, a keyboard. Like there, I start with levels or make it a little wider, or whatever. But I don't change it that much first in order to get a sound. But I feel, especially on drums, what you can do with transients, impact, size, some clarity, but basically that kind of part, it requires the most engineering. So I want to get that started first. And it also, which maybe some people look at it like that, I certainly do. If I have a kick drum and a snare drum and maybe some crashes, this is most of the record's frequency content covered. Maybe the bass too, sure, of course. But like a keyboard might sit in the middle only, but from kick to snare you have like down 40 up to like say 15 kilohertz. So you decided just by putting up the drum tracks how bright, forward, punchy the record is with just a few tracks. So
Okay.
if I can start there, it helps me define what this record will actually be.
Okay. Well, let's hear what how you started and give us a little bit of.
What we got here. So same thing as before. Like I said before, there was a long verb on this drum, which I actually didn't use, but I want you to hear it just to see what I decided against, right? So check this out for a moment. I'm gonna turn these three off for a moment. Like a very long thing that in most of unless I really am going for like a taco drum, I really don't want that at the end. So that's why we just tried went up to the dry. You see it says dry here when I put the insert, sorry, the edit in, and you see the name dry.
Yep.
So now it sounds like this, very short, right? So that's a better place for me to start. Again, these in this case, it's not that many tracks like for this main loop because it's kind of like a breakbeat loop, right? It's just this stuff. And actually, let me turn off the second one because that's something I added. But it's just this is a dark part. Let me go to the chorus. Sorry, they filtered some stuff. And another reason why I don't want to redo your filter. This is a creative decision. This is the open part of the whole kind of breakbeat situation. That stuff by itself, I mean, it could have come as a as a splice loop, and I could have done nothing about it. But it's cool to have the parts to go like, okay, what can I do to this one thing? What can I do more? So actually, in order for me to do stuff, I will probably start with a snare because it's kind of in the middle of the record. So
Okay.
let's just listen for a tiny bit here. What's this one? The distressors, right? Hold on. Well, I don't want to lie. Yes, okay, we'll add that too. I'll explain it too for a moment because it's fun. Some of it is obviously more subtle than other stuff. But so I would start like just see what we have here. Clean, whatever, but kind of like doesn't have much oomph, and I just kind of it's almost like blowing up with a balloon by like every part just a tiny bit, right? So actually, I started to use this distressor thing, which is a parallel compression situation. And I'm gonna see if I can pull up this plugin. This is so cool that this one was actually in the box. But it's basically this thing here. This is a good one. What's it called? The T-Rex version of the distressor. I'm not sure if they claim it's a copy, but it kind of does the thing, all right? So we add like a little bit more like just worldizing to it, like this. Without. It like brings out the energy of the drum a little bit more and the attack a little bit more. And that's why it's in parallel because it doesn't affect the musicality, but just the size a little bit, like pushing it from down there a little bit. Drum leveler, beautiful thing. Just keep it more straight and gives it a little bit more pop. Check this out. Like every single part pushes it up a little bit more. Okay, can this snare be the best it can be, so to speak? The limiter, not sure what I did. Just like pushed it up a little bit. I really wanted to get those ghost notes, which are not fully ghost notes. I want to push them up a little bit. I don't know if you can hear that. But yeah, really like trying to define the middle of the record. And then I think we saw that in one of the splits. Everybody's
Yep.
looking at me going like, "What the hell is this EQ curve? This is nuts." And and I'm like, I'm not even disagreeing with you, you know. But to me, um, an EQ at its very basic, and because it's a digital EQ which theoretically doesn't have much of a color or any vibe to it, whatever. Um, to me, what it does, it gives it frequencies it didn't have before. And if it lacks in the weight department, we need this curve. There is no such thing as a snare EQ that always looks like, oh, whatever. The high end is boosted and everything else is that's silly too. That would be as silly to assume that that's the
Sure.
same. So we're just adding what we feel we're missing, and this is the kind of this kind of wood weightness to it.
So my question would be, so you started off by saying you're starting with the snare because that's a driving element. It's in the center. Does that
Center of the
mean
record.
yeah, do you then go to the vocal?
Not immediately. Like I would finish the drum kit, right?
Okay.
A version of the drum kit. I mean, everybody knows that you don't finish everything gets tweaked as long as you have the session open, basically, right? But you put it into a place. But I do believe in one thing that's very important to me, and I've wrote this on a thing that you should Google called 15 mix trips every producer should know, from I don't know 8 years ago, but it's still true. There's something that there's an anchor in the mix that I feel. And the anchor is one element that you kind of choose that you at least plan to not change much anymore after you have a sound to it. That could be the snare. It theoretically could be the vocal too. It's something where you say instead of getting lost, like everything is too loud, this is too soft, this is too loud, this is too far, this is too blah 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 blah. You always go like, oh, the anchor hasn't moved. In this case, for instance, the snare hasn't moved. But everything in relation to that anchor might be wrong. Not, sorry, not every single part, but you figure out if I don't move the anchor, but everything else around it, then I can paint the picture of the record around that anchor and have like like an aim a place to aim towards, so to speak, you know. And then every time something starts feeling bad, you go like, wait a second, wait. Something's feeling bad. I don't know what it is. And you start muting stuff until you're back at the anchor by itself. Then you put it back in, and at one point something will start feeling bad. That's your culprit. But if you constantly move everything, single thing in the record, then like you're gonna get lost basically. Too many options, too many whatever. So this snare could be my anchor for this record, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Obviously, of course, I don't remember it for every song which one I chose, but snare is good. Vocal can be good, but we do tend to ride vocals a lot, and also like over the course, like try to figure out like, oh, is this vocal still cutting? Is it whatever? So sometimes, even though musically it's the most important thing, sonically it's the thing that we tweak the most. So it's not the anchor in that way. I wonder if you follow me on that, but that's something I believe in. Something has
I
to
do.
stay
Yeah.
straight in your record. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. I just put up a summation of that. Find your anchor mixing often feels like a balancing act. Snare too loud, bass too quiet, guitars too distant. To keep your bearings, choose one element as your anchor. It could be the vocal or the snare, something prominent and central. Get it setting well with EQ and compression, and then build the rest of the mix around it. And if you start to feel lost, mute everything except for your anchor and slowly bring other elements back in. Identify what feels off and fix it instead of second guessing every fader.
Yeah. So you found that. That's a Lander article. Yeah, I wrote it a long time ago. But I still think that is the truth to it. So um
I will tweak and repost for everybody so they can read based on what you're talking about now, and we'll yeah, amazing,
yeah,
absolutely
but
amazing.
that's the idea. And so to come back to this, the EQ to me is just what is this sound missing? This could
Right,
the perf could look much crazier than this because theoretically you have no idea what it sounds like. That's
right.
why, like, I always say, like, somebody like clicks on whatever the SSL. This is not the right SSL for this, but if it was the Waves one, it will probably have like whatever snare drum on it as a preset. And I'm like,
Sure.
that's cool to see what one could be doing, but it's definitely the wrong sound. You know, so it's like I explain it very often like this. Imagine you have an acoustic guitar and all you know that it's out of tune, but you haven't heard it. How many times do you have to turn the peg and in which direction? And you would go like, that's a nuts question because you haven't heard how much it's out of tune, right? I'm like, it's the same
Right,
with the
right.
snare and the kick and guitar. I don't know. I have no idea what it's missing. So that's the gig to figure that out. That's why I do not like EQ presets. Compression presets, a little closer, that's fine. But EQ presets are very often very misleading.
Sure. Yeah. Or if they maybe made, 13 variations of every single one, that might work.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Your snare is dull, make it brighter. Your snare is dull, but also has a ring around 650. You know what I mean?
If it's labeled as such instead of one yard snare one,
Yeah.
you
I
know, hey,
I have been doing this. First of all, I've been making music since I was 16,
yeah,
starting with 4-track cassettes and stuff like that. I've been doing this for a long time, everybody. I've yet to make any presets. I get asked by every single company. Companies email me every day going, I've got a new plugin, got a new plugin, got a new plugin. And we don't, we do plugin reviews, but we don't do every plugin that comes out.
yeah,
It's got to be something earth shattering. We did for a time do a reasonable amount of them, but everybody always says, "Oh, and by the way, play with it, and we'll put your presets in there." And yeah, there's very few presets of anybody, even the best mixers in the world, that I've put on and went, "Yeah, I could use that all the time." It's so rare,
yep.
so
I'm with
rare.
you. The only most of the sorry, I'm not exclusive on that thought, but the
Well, I was
most
going to say reverbs are actually something, and delays. I would
that's
multi-effect.
exactly
I would definitely disagree with myself because when I open up Seventh Heaven and it's got all the different kinds of reverbs as presets, they all work. They're all amazing, and they do exactly what I want them to do. But I agree with you with things like EQ. It doesn't make sense, does it?
no. I'm with you on the verb side. Like I do like making presets for verb because basically that is a sound I'm creating that
Yep.
works. That doesn't mean it will work in your mix, but it is something that by
Right.
itself works, you know.
Yeah.
And if you like that, yay, thank you, or thank me, or whatever.
So from here, what's next stage? Where are we going from here?
We would then in one fell swoop, we would pop in all other instruments. Probably not the vocal just yet, but not far away. Just double checking, like, okay, is the power punch with clarity, especially of places like the chorus and the second verse. I'm gonna say something about the second verse in a moment. Um, are there kind of where we're at? And always a being to the rough mix going like, okay, is the intention still there? Cool. What will have probably just happened is that the drums will now sound a little punchy, a little bigger because that's how I hear stuff. So it might be also now a little bit louder than the rough mix, because I'm pushing into a master chain at this or a master bus, sorry. At the same time, I'm looking for size. And the reason just one more thing to the stems versus the multi-tracks. The reason I do this at this moment is like theoretically the musical intention of the record is now still exactly like the ref mix, but hopefully the quality is maybe a little bit wider, punchier, bigger, maybe a little smiley curvish, if that makes sense. Something like where you go like where I say, like, listen, the music is the same, but the presentation of the music is just a tiny bit bigger. That's the point. I don't
Right.
need to, at this very moment, I need to not decide is the guitar 6 dB too loud or not. Because here's the thing, most likely it's not because the people making the rough mix are smart musicians and producers and artists. They do not get a level wrong by 6 dB. They would
Yeah.
immediately go like, that's too loud. So it would be very silly for me to go like, oh, well, obviously all your balances are crap because you're not a mixer. That's silly. What I need to go is, okay, so now with this quiet, slightly blown up version of your rough mix with the intention of the music there,
Yeah.
what can I now tickle a little bit and go like, okay, that could be a little brighter, a little bit louder, a little bit whatever. But do you see this? Do you see these faders here? These delta values? I'm gonna circle about around it here because I know it's very small. Maybe I click on one. Yeah, here it is. You know, it's these yellow faders, which I wish more people knew about. This is the trim faders in Pro Tools, and they're all in auto read trim. And why is that? Because I want to see, like underneath here, the levels are zero, the zero levels from the stems, which make up the rough mix. When I overlay it with trim faders, I can exactly see on my mix how far I'm away from the original balances. Just balances, we're not talking sound here. And so you see a lot of these are zero, which means I left them where they were. Some are a little pushed, but none are like 10 dB higher or 10 dB lower. This bass, okay, bass is an exception because I want to find bass, so it's louder by 3.5 dB. But this, it gives me a quality feedback like, hey, how far are you away from this rough mix? If it's plus 7 dB, you go like, hey, Richard, is that really what you do? What you wanted to do? I mean, that this either the answer is yeah, of course, because I rule, or the answer is that's a mistake. Oh, I didn't catch that. My bad, right? But it helps because our my job, I think, is making a convincing record, but having it relate to the music that was already created. So I'm looking for size here at this moment, and I start cleaning stuff out. Like, where would I find something? Sorry, I do a lot of this low cutting because I want to clean out the very bottom of the record because I feel that the if you do your job right in most genres, I'm not saying in every single situation, but in most genres, if you find if you clear out the space under 80 hertz, which is the lowest on an electric guitar, unless you have a drop tuning of some sort, um, you can then you theoretically only have the kick drum and the bass in left in the range from let's say 30 to 75 hertz. So theoretically, if you cleaned out everything, it should compete with nothing down there, which means your low end will have space to be in. And then you just have to decide how much of the low end you want to have, not how much it's fighting with, how even or uneven it is, etc., etc. You just basically do that. Oh, I want to say this one thing, maybe the most insight that, or the one thing that's maybe most important for me, for my personal approach is while I do this, drums, and let's say we just put in all the guitars and strings and keyboards and whatever, I will leave the bass out until very much after I wrote all the vocals. I will never listen to the bass. I mean, maybe check what it's there, but I will turn it off because it's this really weird feeling. This my philosophy. I'm not saying I invented this philosophy. I actually think I learned it from Jimmy Douglas, but I could be wrong. But I think that's what he does too. Is like we know where the bass is supposed in the record. We don't know necessarily how loud, but we know it's down there. We know it has to compete with theoretically nothing if you did your job right. And it's not gonna be really loud. It's not, sorry, not loud, like where it covers the vocal. It will not be panned, probably. Like we kind of know where it is, so why listen to it the whole damn time? I take it off because it helps me cleaning out the rest, so that when it's time, I pop it in. I at that point like decide, okay, maybe a little compression or even rides would help. But then I'm done. I don't need to listen to the bass the entire time I'm mixing the record. It helps. It helps me see clearly through the musical arrangement. Because everything else I have to figure out. Okay, this competes with that. This is louder than that. This is pan left. This is pan right. But that doesn't go for the bass. We know where it is from the very first moment that we open the faders. So there.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Eric, did you pick somebody
Yes.
to win the course?
Oh, cool. Somebody won something. Awesome.
Eric, who was it? Who won? Put them up in the thing for us, please. Can you type in who won? Who did you pick? Who won and what was their pick? And people are going, me? Me? Peter Samuelson. What was Peter Samuelson's answer? What was your answer, Peter? Are you still there?
I see some cool question. Trackzilla's brick wall EQ cuts healthy for your mix. Well,
Do you like Trackzilla?
I'm not sure if I know Trackzilla. I'm sorry.
I'm assuming I don't use it either. There are a lot of these. I suppose this is a global question then to sort of ask that question so it makes sense. There are a lot of these fancy plugins where they do frequency dips. across mixes. So let's just say you mix a track, you make it loud, you make it slamming, then you're trying to fit your vocal in, and they will literally just duck the area where the vocal is, predominantly the frequency range it is, and duck it out of the track so it sits inside of the track. Do you ever do that? I think there's Track Spacer's one of those. Do you ever use Track Spacer?
I do use track spacer. It's probably actually on this mix because I do it. I have not used it, but it would be here. It's inactive, track spacer. But I don't do what you just said. Like I don't do the thing where like basically the vocal might auto write all the keyboards and duck them behind. I never do that. I'm aware of that side chaining, of course, but I do fully feel. This is not a slight. I do fully feel that if you need to do that, I think you're just not quite done with the actual overall mixing. There's a
This is
better version.
Yeah, I was on Threads. Anybody else use Threads?
Oh,
You
oh
know,
yeah, from time to
I
time.
was on Threads, and it's a new environment. And what's great about it is a lot of people that maybe don't feel heard on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook can go on Threads where it's still, I mean, it's a few years old, but it's still relatively growing. And they've got a voice, and and I saw a lot of people saying, well, modern mixing. And I was like, what do they mean by modern mixing? And then I watched or read their comments. I think people are taking these plugins that are designed to solve problems and using them specifically to mix. Does that make sense? Like,
Yep.
rather than going, oh, I need to duck out a little bit here because it's the only way I'm going to get this to fit here, and solving it in a certain situation. Now they're using these tools from the get-go, and they're mixing things to like always sort of be even. Like somebody said to me today, and I understand, in an EDM or a hip hop or like a really loud slamming metal track, I do get sometimes where you might have the bass guitar and the kick drum ducking each other out. So when the kick plays, it actually ducks the bass. I get that, but there's no way on a very or a more organic track that would sound good. It would sound absolutely dreadful for the bass guitar to disappear for a second. But when it comes to a massive slamming, square wave, hit you over the head metal or EDM track, I get it because you're just trying to keep that low end hitting consistently. So I agree with you. I think these tools are phenomenal, but you're right. It's the thing I always talk about with top-down mixing and stuff. It's like if there's a problem you're trying to solve on your master bus, even a bus of your drums, you're trying to solve it there. Maybe figure out where's it happening on the individual elements that are fighting each other. The earlier you get it, the better your mix is going to be. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Mister.
To me, I said this in a recent interview. And it's funny when a question triggers like the truth, like what you, no, sorry, the truth, how you think about stuff. I'm not saying I'm fully right. No,
Sure.
please mix your record however you want. This is just the ideas, right? I feel the following. For instance, ducking bass with a kick drum by like a couple of dBs, 3 dBs when they hit together. That is a technique that works when you have an issue. It's not a thing you always have to do. That's very important, right? But it is a technique that I use. That's the one why that track spacer is there. The other thing, ducking the entire guitar and keyboard pack with the vocals with a track spacer or something like that is a technique you can use. I personally think you can mix a little harder and you will come to probably a better outcome. Maybe the same outcome and then you were faster. Congratulations. But also the answer is not you have to do that in order to make a fantastic record. I personally never do that. Okay, fair. And then lastly speaking, it's like when you say about modern mixing, I'm like, the modern mixing is not the technique, it's the outcome. However I get there
Sure.
doesn't matter. I don't need saturation to modern mix. I need saturation if I need saturation for this track. So however we get there, and actually some of the mixes that are out right now sound awesomely throwback, like a bunch of like Bruno Mars stuff, for instance, right? There's no modern
Yeah. Oh,
mixing on
God.
there. Like
Oh,
there is not such a thing. Just consider this a tool in the toolbox and not a must do this in order for my record to sound excellent. And that's
Yep.
all. Then we can live together. But if you say that's the trick, I'm like, no, that's not the trick. I don't think so. Or at least I don't need it. Maybe you need it. Maybe you're happier with it. Fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a saturated market with plugins, clearly. There's a million of them. And, now, and it's something I've avoided. I still yet haven't got a plugin.
Which one, sorry?
I still don't have a plugin. I don't have a
Oh,
Warren.
for your own, like this is a cool, yeah, yeah. I actually, the funny part is I thought about that many times. Like, should I try to talk to somebody about making a plugin? And actually, the one of my not my issues was, but I was like, you know what I really would like to have is a very smart de-esser plugin, and also a plugin that automatically does low cuts for me at the exact right place, right? So it's like basically more like a helper tool or maybe a macro. It's
Sure.
very unsexy. I cannot sell that. And actually, though I do want to give a shout out, just last week I learned about a plugin called Split S, and I don't know what the company is, but it does exactly what I thought it should be possible. It has two sliders. One is everything that's not an S. The other one is everything that's an S. And you just turn it down and it doesn't compress. It just figures out this is an S and turns it down. And I had that idea 4 years ago, but I didn't know how to go about it. So these guys did it. I'm like, that's fantastic. But yeah, I can't sell it as the Richard Furch de-esser plugin, certainly because I had nothing to do with it. Like, but I
Yeah.
also go like, that's not a very sexy thing to sell.
Well, look, let's do another giveaway.
Yes,
We
please.
asked everybody what was the one plugin. This is to win Richard's course. What's the one plugin you couldn't live without? Your favorite plugin? What one question do you want to ask any producer, engineer, or mixer? What's the one thing you want to know? You'd want to know about anybody?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Hmm. 1 second. I mean, I do have questions. There are mixes. Everybody has heroes, right? I'm going to tell you,
Oh, ask them who their favorite mixer is. That's a good question.
yeah, my personal heroes are Mark Spikestand.
Of course.
There are Serban. I guess these two are actually in a league of their own, I would say.
Okay. I'd put Bob Clearmounts in there as well. I'm huge.
So here's something funny with Bob Clearmountain. I feel I love. I was in a panel with him, the most beautiful human being, the best steak eater. I mean, we had a good fun time. Anyway, um, he's amazing. Of course, growing up, I loved his stuff. I'm gonna say, and I'm because he's so down to earth. I think he has no tricks. He's just very effing good at this. Like he uses the
Oh, it's no
SSL like,
tricks.
huh?
He doesn't solo. He does not solo. He just mixes.
Right, exactly. He just does this thing. So it's always in a weird way where I'm like, you're so good at this. I think I understand everything you're doing,
So as
but
a
it is
producer engineer, and I'm interrupting you, I'm being
yeah.
really rude here. I apologize, but as a producer engineer, every one of those has mixed something for me.
Oh,
And
nice. Andy Wallace is one of my favorites too, by the way.
Andy's did a record for me. Yeah. Um, Serban did a record, a couple,
Yeah,
and did mix off on another big album I was doing. Michael Brower mixed 3 albums in a row for me, I think. Chris has mixed stuff. Chris has mixed a record that I co-produced, engineered, and mixed most of it on, and he mixed 2 songs on it. I've got personal experiences with all of them. The only mixer and experience I've ever had where I have been so happy with a record, and then I was told by the label that they wanted the singles to be remixed by Spike. And
mm,
I remember thinking to myself, you're crazy. This record sounds phenomenal. And I go into when he was working in Chalice, maybe 15
yeah,
years ago. I go into Chalice,
2008.
yeah, and he pulls up the single of the band I produced, and I listened to it and I turned to him. I said, "That is the best first mix I've ever heard in my life, and I have no notes." And I don't know what he did. He just made it more exciting, and it was already exciting. He
Yeah,
made it more like it just jumped out of the speakers. It wasn't flatlined, squashed. It just everything seemed to be coming at me in such an exciting way. And I remember asking him just like, "What did you do?" And he's like, "Oh, it was." So I do agree with you. I think Spike in particular, and then Serban's mixed. When I was doing a lot more pop stuff, he mixed the American Idol stuff I was doing, and and it was good. It was really good. But Spike, Yeah. I think the thing about Spike is I remember reading a quote with him and I asked him when we were hanging out, because it was before I did YouTube. And I said to him, I said, I read this quote, and he goes, yeah, it's true. He goes, like, tell me the things that you shouldn't distort, and I'll distort them. Tell me the things that shouldn't have effects on them, and I'll put tons of effects on them. Tell me the things that should be, that should not have this, whatever. The point is like he doesn't have any kind of conventional way of doing it. Chad Blake, I think, is another one of those guys
Yeah,
that
yeah.
yeah, that you're just like, wow, I never would have thought of that. And I think for us that do this a lot and know how to get to a mix sounding really good relatively quickly, that extra little special sauce that guys like Chad Blake and Spike Stent can do, where they just like, how did you think of that? Like Jeff Beck on guitar, like I
Yeah.
never would have thought of doing that. That's why for me, I get what you're saying about Spike, because that's the only time in my life I was just like, what the what? What did you even? How did you come do that? Yeah.
It,
Anyway,
it,
long story. Sorry.
it's that, and what's so interesting to me about Spike and Serban is both the sound, but then also the consistency. I'm like, how do you do that? And when I say that, and I mean this with the most reverence to Bob Clearmountain, I feel like I understand what he does. I can imagine him mixing. He's just so insanely good at it. Like, and so is Andy Wallace, by the way. Both of them very minimalist mixers who don't do anything that you go like, well, I've never heard of that or whatever. There's no tricks. They just do it so well that it's maddening.
Well, they both own the SSL. It's like the SSL is their BITCH. They just make it do what they want.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? That I don't know. I have never seen anybody be more fluent on an SSL. And Crystal Algae is very fluent as well, but Bob is like, because Bob's like, I know he lost his console in
Yeah.
the fire, but his old console, I mean, he's modding it.
Yep.
He's creating extra bus compression. He's like, oh well, I modded it to do this, this, and this. He's like, it's an extension of his soul.
Yeah, and I want to say something very beautiful about that thing. So Bob Clearmountain just lost his studio and his console, and
Yep.
Chris Lloyd Alge and Tom Lloyd Alge have donated each part of a SSL console that is currently being built and modded as the Bluestone mod for Bob Clearmountain as a thank you from the community. So that is insane, and I want to be that kind of person. And I wish philanthropy wasn't this expensive.
Yep, I agree. No, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things for so many of us, especially in LA, where we all just look at Bob as being, he's kind of the godfather. Because regardless of whether you think he's the greatest mixer or third greatest mixer or whatever it is, whatever order you want to put it in, he is still everybody's kind of idea of what a mixer should be. And I think Jack said to me, as far as Jack Douglas was concerned, he believes that Bob was the first superstar mixer.
Yep.
It tells me the story of he was making, I want to say, Draw the Line, Aerosmith, and he was in one room, and Bruce Springsteen was doing, I can't remember if it was The River or anyway, he was doing, so Bruce was in one room and the Aerosmith were in the other. I think it was at the record plant, and Bob was upstairs, and they were both the bands were coming right up against their deadline. And Bob just came down and said, look, I've got a couple of days. Do you want me to mix a few tracks just to help the momentum going? And he said that was the beginning. That was like, it was about 1980 or whatever that is. And it was the beginning of just like the superstar mixer. So we all have to pay him homage anyway, because we're all here because of him.
And then he's nice on top of that. God damn it.
He has no ego. Okay, so the question is, everybody, who's your favorite mixer? Who's the one? Who do you look up to? And Eric will pick somebody at random. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and you can share the video as well, of course. And let us know who is your favorite mixer. And we'll give you a few minutes, and then Eric will pick somebody at random. So where are we up to next now? Ricky Ricardo?
Well, at this point, we're probably in the vocals, I would say. Like the record is. Oh, I wanted to say something about the second verse because it's super
Please.
important. I think as an approach thing for you for help. I know a lot of people, and from time to time I do it. Start with a chorus. Hey, I want to make this sound the biggest I can. Blah blah blah. Maybe it hits the compression the most on the stereo bus, etc. That all makes sense. It's a great way to do things. But I always thought, musically speaking, I'm a pianist by the way. So I have a 40-year pianist career in me as well. I always thought musically speaking, that's an odd thing to play be because basically you are creating the biggest thing that you can, and then now the other important parts, verses, pre-choruses, maybe bridge, who knows, um, have to be smaller than that, right? Because basically you want to explode into the chorus. And also most of the songs these days start with the verses. So you're mixing something that doesn't happen at the top of the record. And it's like, that's an approach-wise, maybe not the right idea always. So I thought about this for a while and I was like, well, the second verse, isn't the second verse in most records the one where like now we have everything in, probably drums are in now, like it's like a middle of the middle in size of the entire record, not the beginning, not the like piano intro only, whatever, but something where the record is now going, the groove is happening. So now if you started actually mixing the second verse first and get it pretty big, maybe not the biggest because you need space, right? And then you say, okay, well now go to the chorus and say, can I expand this already pretty sound a little bit further? Isn't that exactly what music is supposed to do? It's supposed to go up instead of going down from the chorus. Does that make sense? So I'm
Yeah.
kind of feeling that often I start putting together the second verse because I'm like, okay, this is the middle of the road of this record. This is where I can push with a little space to go somewhere and then touch it up. And hopefully, if the arrangement is good, then that's exactly what will happen. Like, for instance, the entire pack of second verse instruments will probably be still in the chorus, except for now there's six more guitars, or now there's the strings. So musically speaking, we're adding to that very same pack. If you do it the other one, the way around, there's a chance you get a very decently packed chorus and then kind of like a lackluster verse because you basically made room for everything in the chorus, but now it's too small in the second verse. Anyway, something to think about. I'm not saying that is the end all be all, but it's a way to approach a record, and that's something I would have probably done here. Um,
Okay.
I'm not saying I did because I actually literally don't remember, but but it would have
We
been.
hear a little bit of it and just to
Let's see
illustrate your point.
what's happening here. Coming just like like a moment out of the chorus into the second verse. And also, I turned some stuff off that I need to turn back on. Sorry, my bad. Yeah.
There I go, smelling like
Would be
a
here.
bird's home. Rocky road, dripping out of my ice cream cone. Ooh, I lace 'em up, fresh white wheels and silver trucks. Oh, yeah, heading out, hit that pavement, cruising now. Oh, spinning on my roller skates, watch my troubles float away.
Just a little bit of that. I mean, what you hear mostly here is like it went from the second verse into the pre-chorus where it expanded with those extra guitars, you know. But that's the idea. We have that same drum loop. This is a very linear drum loop going from the second verse through to the second chorus. But that breathing, small to big, and small to big can be volume, but small to big can also be panning, like width, etc. But if you get everything too compact in the chorus and then now it's small in the verses, now you have to work again to make it a little bigger. That's a lot of extra work that I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to go in a musical direction, expanding it. Yeah, that's kind of the idea here. And then obviously, you know, at this point I would probably put in the lead vocal all the way through the thing. Level some, as we talked about, it is compressed, etc. So there's less rides on there than I would normally do. But listen, and actually Warren and I talked about this in the last course. There are people
Yeah.
that just compress and don't ride, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm actually more the opposite. I'm like, I am amazed that that works for them, so to speak. I'm like, yeah, your one gig is to make the vocal more even, etc. But the other gig is to make sure it reads through every snare drum, through every guitar lick, everything. So even a fully L1 limited doesn't move at all dynamic, non-dynamic vocal does not necessarily mean it's now leveled and will read at all places. Especially when you're looking for a level that is close to the music, and which is something I try to do because the louder the vocal is, the smaller the music will sound. So if your goal is to have the vocal be just loud enough that it is perceived as loud, then that's basically the loudest the track can be because all the other tracks will be then together in that pack. But that means that like a linearly compressed vocal cannot possibly at all places cut through that same moment of however many other instruments are coming at that moment. That's why even though we're compressing, the client is compressing, etc., I still will ride on top of that. Now, here's the thing. I would like to go home soon and sorry, like early as well. So I wish I could just step on it more and more and more until I'm like, oh, I'm done here. But I personally feel I can't, and that's actually what makes me different than other people. I'm like, and that's not a better or worse. That's a style thing. Like I like the way it's not 100% compressed, but also ridden on top, and that takes me a lot of time. Unfortunately, it takes me between 2 and 4 hours per mix. It
Okay.
sucks. I really personally think it sucks, but that's what I have to do in order to please myself.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. I really do. I think it's worth that extra time and effort. I love automation in those respects.
Yeah.
I really do. I love being able to get in there and do that kind of detail work, and it does make all of the difference. But at the same time, I remember getting quite obsessive about it, and then talking to Shelley Yakis, and Shelley was like, "Yeah, you do that too much, though. It becomes really safe and really boring." There's another thing that, the reason why I said I love Spike Stentz mixes because they're all wrong in all the right ways. Like
Mhm.
messing up things that you're like, why is that distorted? That shouldn't be distorted. Sounds brilliant. And
Well, that's the question I would have for him though. I'm like, how
what
do
would
you
be the
get
question specifically?
for Spike Stand? Like, if you listen to his Ed Sheeran stuff, for instance, how do you get the vocal this linear, this this very well compressed? It doesn't sound spitty. It sounds just very linear,
Sure.
very strongly in a way where I'm like, I want to believe that my Spike Stent doesn't want to write this vocal for 4 hours a day at this point in his career. Maybe he does. I'm sorry, that I'm not trying. This is the thing. At all levels, we do wonder what our heroes do. We're like, how does he do it? How can I get it better? Or how can I get it faster? Which step
Chris,
am I wrong about?
CLA, Chris slaps an L1 on it before he even goes through the analog stuff.
Yeah.
He just goes and then sends it through all his analog stuff and
Yeah.
through the SSL channel. So it's already smashed.
Yeah,
Uh,
whatever works for this particular person's sound. Because
yeah.
like, CLA does not sound like Al Schmidt. It doesn't mean one of them does it right and one does it wrong. It's just a different sound.
Worked with Al. Al mixed stuff for me as well. Al would, I mean, honestly, it's probably different because I'm old school when I record, so my vocal has compression on it
Yeah.
quite a lot,
Yeah.
very evenly compressed. I use a 160 and 1176, sometimes even two serials
Okay.
folding back on each other, and it's super upfront. And I do the detail work. I'll pull down the S's, pull down the breaths. So by the time it comes to mix, it's pretty much there. So for Al, when he mixed some Aerosmith stuff I did, it was just an 1176 tapping it. That was all he did.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, the more this is the thing, like what Warren was just saying is basically your tracking version and your pre-mix production work with the S's, et cetera, et cetera. That is pretty close to a stem. You just happen to deliver it on a mono thing without a reverb.
Yeah, you're right. When we interviewed Emre
Mhm.
about 4 months ago, and we listened down to Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars,
Oh, nice.
he opened up the session of Ken's session for the immersive mix, and he's like, "There's two compressors on this whole mix."
Yeah.
because he's like, Ken just recorded it, so when it came up on fader, it sounds like the album.
That's amazing, and it does come both from intention and
Hmm.
also from limitation because you just didn't
Exactly.
have 10,000 1176. Well, now literally I have as many as I want. I can also to make this kind of automation that I was just showing here. That's actually really hard to do on a board. That was not available in the 80s. I mean, sure, there are ways, but I like when with Mike Shipley would like EQ every syllable, but at the time it was like with the center section G series compressor like that you could actually automate stuff like that. But now because it's so easy, I can push up a syllable where I want it. That would have been a major operation in the 90s and even early 2000s still. And so I think that changes our approach to it. I'm like, I can, so I will. But that's not good or bad. That's just an evolving of the technology and our way of listening to records.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so take us from where we're at now.
Well,
What's your
let's see.
next part of your thought
I
process,
mean,
my
at
friend?
this point, like again, I would probably still have the would still have the bass out, or we'll now maybe start popping it here and there, going, okay, kind of works. But overall, the record is in. What I do a lot is I work two ways of looking at the record is three ways is very important to me. One, how does the sound go all the way top to bottom? That's a kind of a length of the record way of doing things like automation, like adjusting levels. Okay. But then I do also go by section. I loop a verse like after it's already in a shape, right? We're like basically we're now Michelangelo. We have the statue, but we don't have the details. And hopefully we don't lose the statue from now on. But I often go, these sections are important to me, like half the verse, half the pre-chorus, half the chorus. I just loop them and go like, if I heard only this part, what would stick out to me? What would be missing? So I will go through that through the entire record and see, can I add a throw here or there? I'm sure there's some somewhere. Uh, well, you know what a throw looks like, but here's infinite verb would be an ending. You see it. There's like a throw at the end. Like where can I add something that musically is not there yet? So I go
Right.
through that through the entire record, listen again, and now comes the opposite, which is the other most important place, musically speaking, in the record are these spaces from here to here, from the end of the verse to the pre-chorus, from the pre-chorus to the chorus. This is what I call the swoosh. How can I help one section dramatically go into the next section? And that could be anything. It could be a drum fill. It could be an effect. It could be doing nothing because the music was arranged in a way where you go like, well, it's already doing that naturally. But to check that these sections travel us from one part of the record to the next is super important to me as a storyteller. I just want to see, is there anything I can put here that shows that kind of like catches the attention of the listener, both as an effect or just energy wise. Does it push up a little bit? Does it like yeah, okay, that would be this. I don't know if you can hear this. Let's see if I can go here with this swoosh thingy.
Day sky.
Whoosh thingy.
Ooh.
And
Technical
it kind
term
of
there.
like floats into space because it made sense at the end of that. And sometimes your client will say that sucks. I never wanted that. Or sometimes you literally do the opposite. Like they wanted that everything stops. And now you're putting a damn swoosh on there. Like, what are you doing? But creatively speaking, of course, there should be no anger. There should be just like, I see what you're doing here. I don't like that. And that's it. That's not that hard. So I look at this from these three spots, the whole record, how does it sound? Every section, and then from every section to every section. Those are the places that I have to at least double check if they work for me or not. If they can be done better, or you're like, whatever I'm trying, it sounds contrived or whatever, then just leave it alone. But to at least take a look there and make that work. And once you're there at that point, then musically speaking, I would say you're in done land. Like the record should be done here. But that speaking, I will probably at that point look into my master bus a little bit more and go like, well, is there a way where I can tweak it dynamically just a little bit more? Like for instance, I mean, obviously here you see I probably when I decide, hey, what can I do from the end of pre-chorus to chorus, I pushed it a little bit further. I want to say something about this that has changed for me recently, because I've read something that was very interesting. John Haynes said this, who's serving engineer's assistant slash now Atmos mixer, whatever. But let me summarize this. This is the master fader, but it's actually an aux return, and this is the actual master fader, right? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
The opposite, actually. My bad. This is a master fader that is actually a master fader, but it goes into an actual master fader, which is an aux return. The reason is because here I can push into all my plugins in Pro Tools. This volume line is before the plugins. In an aux return, the volume line is after all the plugins. Okay, so what he's pointed out that I never really thought about, because I used to I would do the bump at the end of the master fader instead of here. But he said something really interesting. If you make a volume bump at the end of the master fader after all your compression and maybe after your limiter, which then you obviously know will probably end up with some over, though I'm not caring. I don't care about that. But he said if you then send it to mastering, they will probably compress and limit on top of your move, so to speak, and it will just disappear. So it's kind of, yes, on your reference, you did a thing, but in the final record, there's a good chance that it will just disappear, which is obviously not what we want. He said, if we do this at the beginning of the master chain, then yes, you're pushing into, in my case, here's a compressor and also the limiter, but actually your music gets a little denser. So what you wanted was not actually volume, but kind of pressure. And I really like that idea. That's like, oh, okay, so that will be retained because the mastering engineer cannot undo that. I mean, not because they willfully are bad, but because it literally, if they compress it, well, that little extra pressure will stay in that master. So I like that. So I will probably push here. I will listen again, going like, does it clip anywhere? Does it matter to me? Because sometimes a lot of records have a tiny bit of dirt in it that clips here and there. And if it's not too detrimental, we might be okay with it. And actually the density slash power slash volume of the record is more important than the very little big, oh, there's this tiny tick of distortion that somebody might care about, but I don't. I mean, if the client calls it out, I'll undo it, whatever. But I'll try creatively to get the record to a level where it could be released today, even if it was not mastered yet. That's kind of, so I'm probably spending another 15, 20 minutes just like pushing and pulling a little bit, go like, hey, how hard can I go here? And I'm not listening for volume, I'm listening for size, because the louder you push something, the smaller it gets most of the time, the less punch it has. So there is normally a sweet spot where you go like, okay, I can push it here, still sounds good, and now it's broken, or now the kick is limited too much and I can't do it anymore. Like it's a compromise to begin with. I mean, everything over minus LUFS minus like 12, everything above that is compromised by compression and limiting. There's no way around it. You just have to make peace with that fact and then decide what's creatively important to you there. So that's what happens. But at this point, we're probably 4 or 5 hours into the record. I have the super cool plugin.
What's the super cool plugin?
Oh, this one. The one that literally just crashed my session. It's
the one that just crashed your session.
Because I actually had the update plugin piece. Sorry about that. It's called the Hofer Project Time. And it's
Tell us about the Hofer Crash My Session plugin.
The new version does not. I know this for a fact. It's of course German because they're cool. No, whatever.
Are you trying to say German plugins crash sessions? What are you saying?
That's what I'm saying. they're called Crashwork. Get it? Nine. The Project Time plugin is a plugin that lets you It just measures how long you're working on the session. It has this really cool thing. It like consecutively saves all the session time. So every time you open and close it, it just knows you open and close it, and gives you like an Excel sheet if you want it to, of all the times that you use. So you can actually learn how you're working and how fast you're working. And then it has this really cool thing after I told them about it, which is it lets you time out, because often we have the Pro Tools session open, but we're actually now on Instagram. So then that would obviously the wrong time, right? So if the transport doesn't move for any time, like 30 seconds, whatever, you can send like a set like a window, it will stop counting. So basically, you can exactly know how much time you spent on your mix, and it helps you with your time management, project
Oh,
management. I
interesting.
love it. I figured out that most of my mixes take about 5 hours to mix one.
Hmm.
And then, sometimes it's 8 if it's complicated. That's after my assistant prep stuff. And then, you spend another hour or so for revisions, and then overall, maybe in 3 sessions. I don't know. It doesn't take so long to do a revision. And then you do stems and all that stuff. In the end, it like just counts all your process, and you go like, oh, I actually know how long as of work, not just the mix, but the entire work requirement of my project is, and that obviously helps me with my business and trying to price myself and trying to figure out, okay, is this a big deal or a small deal? Can I do this? Can I not do this, etc. So a project time, it teaches you about your own work habits. So I love that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna load this session again, but it's a good one. But no, most of the time, I'm somewhere. It's kind of freakish how I am done with a mix one almost exactly at 5 hours every single time. I'm like, I always look at the number and like, what again? How? But that's how long it takes to like tweak everything, check everything, walk away, take a break, come back, go like, this and that and the other. I can't do it in two. I mean, every now and then, if there's a hip hop track, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not knocking that. It's just most of hip hop tracks are less involved. That's all I'm saying. And then most of the time are very linear. So there I can save time probably. But most things I do have the whole band and orchestra and some horns and 80 background vocals, and to dial that in 2 hours, I just can't. I do see this stuff on Instagram when they're like, "Oh yeah, 4 more to go today," and I'm like, "Oh shit, I don't know how to do that at all. That would that would freak me out." No, it takes a little longer than that. I feel.
Amazing. Amazing. Let's do one more giveaway, Eric.
Yep.
Is Eric there? Is he nodding off?
Yeah. He's doing his thing.
He's doing his thing. So we did favorite mixer, we did favorite plugin. I suppose this I like us obviously we're going to ask a question that everybody can answer. And firstly, there's over 100 people watching. Can we get over 100 likes? So if you haven't liked yet, please
I
hit the
love
like
it.
button.
Love it.
And Eric's going to put up the course itself if you haven't already got it, although you have a chance now of winning the course. And also, we're going to throw in a 1 year's membership to Produce Like a Pro. And if you're already a Produce Like a Pro member, we'll upgrade it to a lifetime. Oh my God! Did
I
you
want
really
one.
just do that? So what's the question? What do you want to ask, Richard? What if you had a hundred or so producer engineers and mixers standing around? What would the one question you want to know from them all? I've thrown you under the bus, haven't I? You're like,
No, no. If I had one question, this is maybe this is a great forum for this. I would love an answer, almost like a poll. Like, what do producers don't like about working with their mixers uh most? I mean, sure, everybody has a little bit of things in there
what do you mean by don't like the most? Do you mean
like what is the one thing that comes up in their relationship with their mixer all the time when they're like, oh man, these mixers, man, they always do the blah, 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 blah." Like, what is the one thing that producers do not like about working with mixers? And I don't know what that is.
oh, okay. So if somebody is mixing your track
Yeah, yeah.
You want to know what is the thing that you just wish that they wouldn't do? What's the one thing that drives you nuts about
Well,
using
I
a
can't
mixer?
ask my client, of course. I don't want to, but so I would have to
You want
ask them.
you want to get better at the job. You're
I
like, help
always
me be
like
better.
here's the thing. If I were selling ice cream, I would go like, hey, satisfaction surveys. In the music industry, I rather not. I don't want to ask what was
Okay.
good, what was bad about the experience. You know.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, how about this? What was? I'm going to find a way of asking this question so that it's an easy answer. What is? How about this? Why don't we ask? What's the question? What's the one thing you disliked about having somebody mix your track?
Yeah.
What's the one thing, everybody, that you disliked about having your track mixed? When it came back, you were like, if only this or if only that. What is that one thing that
Do
you
you have one?
disliked?
I mean, without obviously, but because you
Um,
hire big mixers, is there anything that these people do that you would love not for them to do?
I mean, mine are quite straightforward and probably exactly like what yours would be. Um, I've had stuff come back sounding worse than the rough.
Mhm.
One of the biggest thing I think with a couple of quite well-known mixers that use a lot of processing, lots of parallel busing and all this kind of stuff. I've had mixes come back and they just sound cloudy. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, because they're running through all of these different clever busing and all this stuff, and it's causing tons of phase issues between you and me, quite frankly. And things came back a bit cloudy. And I remember working with this one quite famous mixer and saying, I need some things coming forward. Everything feels like it's being pushed back. And they were not very receptive because they had a system of working, the way that they had everything coming back on their consoles. So I think for me, it's a dumb one. I just want it to come back sounding either completely unexpected, like Stent did, like, oh my God, I never would have thought of that, but it's amazing. But typically speaking, I think most of us as producers and engineers want the mix to come back sounding like more of what we did. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? Like
Yeah.
if I mixed a pretty kind of open sounding record, I'd love for it to come back just kind of that you would hear that and you would just like maybe add a bit more ambience around here and like but the low end a bit stronger and the high highs a bit crispier, a bit more airy, and some of the stuff that needs to poke forward, just bring it forward. You know what I mean? I think I know you would be able to do this. You'd hear that and go, oh, I understand the intention. Just needs to be more of that. I need to freaking, exaggerate it so it's like, whoa, and blows you away. I think that's what we do as mixers, isn't it? We listen to people's tracks and go, I see the intention. Let's exaggerate that to an extent. Let's make it, really exciting. So the thing that usually frustrates me when I've worked with mixers, even some of the biggest, it comes back and I'm like, that's supposed to be better.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a dumb question, dumb statement, isn't it?
Well, it's true though because it's an important thing. Like that this is why I always do this thing. Like this is your rough mix. This is my mix. That's the idea. It's not. I mean, hopefully, if I'm good, if I'm right, if I did it right, that's what we're doing. We don't want to do this. Like we don't want to change it into some
Yeah.
Frankenstein version of what was it never was. No, the point is doing this. And what is that? It could be space, it could be distortion, it could be excitement, whatever, but it is still the same music, but somehow more um intensive, immersive, minus Atmos, of course, but like just something where you go like, oh, that's my song still just slightly better. I think that is the description,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the only exception to that is when somebody literally throws up their hand and goes, I don't know, I think I messed this up. The producer, sorry, I think I messed this up. Can you somehow save this? But on the other hand, the chance of being on the same page on that one is really, really, really low. Like now when they say do your thing, that's the worst I can hear from somebody because it means now 10 revisions. I'm not kidding. That's every single time that happens. They say these words, they don't really mean it. It's more like we're all a little lost in space and we
Yeah.
don't know what it is. Um, in my experience, every single time that becomes a long process. Now, it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
it might come out to a good ending. I'm not saying it's all crap, but it's not, they actually do not want you to do their thing. Theoretically, we don't have a thing except for trying to make it better somehow. And if we agree where we're going with that, then we have a beautiful time. If we don't, we will probably not come to the end. And that's actually that's fair, because if I'm selling creativity instead of plumbing, then I should be able to do something that you don't like. And I say this sometimes to my clients, sometimes. I'm a sorry, I'm a mixer. I'm a very good mixer. I'm not a mind reader. I can mix you a record, and I will do the best that I can, and I will tell you it will be a very, very good mix, but I cannot guarantee that you like it. Once we're on that page, that is creativity to me, you know? Like we get there, you say, okay, I see what you're doing. I like this, like this, like that. I don't like this, and that. And then we like kind of build up our project together and come up with a thing that is better than if we had done it fully by ourselves with no notes. And that's fair. I think that is what we need to do. Yeah, well, that's really where I'm at with that.
Hey, Eric. Eric's going to mute me for a second. And I just have to step out for a second. I have to break for 1 minute.
Mhm.
Eric,
Yeah.
what did you have you chosen somebody? Did anybody? You know what? I'm gonna throw this back on you, young Richard. Why don't you read? Can you see these? What people? Because I know this is information we both want to know. Lots of detailed like for instance here, just as an artist, I don't like a layer of separation to the mixer and being given something that I dislike the sound of and no ability to change. I spent 10 years learning to do it myself. So I spent, okay, yeah. So when somebody just like doesn't even pay attention to your vision and just decides I think that's something maybe you can speak about this, Richard. I think a lot of mixers as they're coming up, they do learn how to make a good mix, but they haven't figured out to make 10 versions of that mix yet. They only know how to do it one way. You know what I mean? And it ends up being, I only do loud and slamming. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's an acoustic guitar vocal. Yeah. I'm going to throw it onto you.
Okay, well, yeah, I can tell some. I can say something about that very easily. I saw it earlier. Communication, 100% the key. And I do know, and I've actually experienced this in mastering here and there, when you get something and you theoretically have notes, you don't like something, whatever, and now you're talking to some kind of manager about it, and I'm like, why am I talking to a manager? I need to be talking to the creative doing this, you know? And I understand people have their ways of working. I'm not saying it's totally wrong, but that might be a misfit to the way I communicate. So to me, it is super important to me that the client feels seen and also has a voice. Actually, I said this recently, you could go like version one of your mix. You could be so proud of it as a mixer that you go like, "Oh, I ruled, I crushed it. This is the best thing ever." And maybe you're even right. Hey, I'm not saying you can't, right? But wouldn't it be a little weird to go like, "Hey, you have an artist that spends like, I don't know, 5 months to record the single, making 10,000 decisions along the way, arrangement, recording, playing, comping, all of this thing. It gives it to the mixer. Then comes mix one, right? And then all of a sudden, that person, that mixer, even though they might be really good, fantastically awesome, the best in the world, now they nailed every single thing you thought about without having that extra information on mix one. That's totally unreasonable. I mean, sure, here and there that happens. I have gotten mixed ones approved, of course, this happens, but it cannot be the goal, right? Otherwise, the mixer would be the artist or something like that. No, the goal is to enhance this record, thus creating more input from the artist, going like, oh my God, I didn't know it could be that. But if it's like this, then could we do this one more thing and this one delay throw? And I mean, the vocal is just a little dark. I see what you're doing, but I want it a little different. That's healthy. So actually getting the mix approved by, let's say, version 3 or 4, that's normal for me. And I think that's great because that's basically gives you a chance of doing whatever I want to do. Version 2 will be either a bunch of notes or maybe a quick scene change, like okay, that's maybe too pushed or more too compressed, whatever. That's a fair input. That's fair input, right? I can go with that. You say that's too sounds too loud, too pushed, whatever. That just say that, and we'll tweak it. And then version 3 and 4, it's like, okay, here's 2 more notes and here's 1 more note. Okay, now it's done. That sounds super healthy to me. Everybody should be happy about that. The mixer, the artist, etc., etc. Um, so yeah, mix 1 approved. It's odd to me. There's always something else going on that doesn't quite make sense. Sometimes it's mix 10. I have done a mix 10 and a mix 12 for very picky artists, and it was like little detail work here and there, and I was glad. I was like, yeah, bring it, bring it, bring it. Like I just want them to walk away and go like, I got exactly what I wanted, and that's fine. And then I don't know if you remember this story, but like when they mixed "Shallow" for Lady Gaga, Tom Elmhurst had to make 17 versions, and Lady Gaga actually asked, sorry, thanked him at the Gold Globes for those 17 versions. And I'm like, well, if one of the best in the world needs 17 versions to get this right, or the team needs that because maybe it's arrangement changes, I don't know, then why don't we? This makes no sense. We just have to be here for our client. That's where the communication comes in. Yeah. Anyway, I hope that helps. Let me just see. Let me just read a little bit here, see if I find something else. Automation, volume, yeah, communication is the absolute best. Also, freedom for the mixer to do at least once for the version 1 to do what they intend. That's why I will never send out a mix that I don't feel could go out the next day to radio. Now, am I right about that? No, of course not. Of course, the team, the management, the label, the artist, everybody could say that's not ready yet. Okay, fine, I get you. But at least I have completed one version, one vision of this song uh, at the beginning. I will never say, oh yeah, here's version 1, but I know I still need to write the vocals. I will never ever do that. That's lame. I think that's lame. What else do we get? Into the mixing session, ton plugin. Oh, yeah, yeah. When it came to the mixing session, there was like 10 plugins on every track, and the whole sound was killed. Well, some people would agree with that, some people don't. That's fine. I mean, I can show you, like, even if there's not 10 plugins on every track. Let's say this reverb, right? Sorry, this lead vocal. Whatever was on there that they did, I don't know. So there might be already 6 plugins on then. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more plugins. So we had 11 plugins going to the Alvox, which has I don't know, I see it now. There, 1 more, but could be more. 12 plugins, and that goes to the mix bus. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 plugins before it goes to the main mix. Does it matter? No, doesn't. And it used to be also the same when in the vintage days, so to speak, because you would have like a mic pre, compressor, EQ, a board to a tape machine, from a tape machine to a board, to an EQ, through a compressor, through a fader, through a massive bus, through an EQ. So that's not new, like even in analog, there were 12 or so processors in front of every sound. So, but you're right, it can choke the sound. You're right, totally. They can choke the sound, but it doesn't necessarily have to. And actually, I just read this really awesome thing Chad Blake said, who's also one of my heroes, I suppose. He said like he rather uses 10 plugins just a tiny bit than 2 plugins a lot. Um, anyway, but so basically, there's no right or wrong. But I hear you. If they choke the sound, that could be it. But it's not necessarily because they use 10 plugins. They just use 10 plugins not to your liking, which is fair. What else we got? Bass is too loud. Okay, cool. Well, then you theoretically just have to tell them to turn down the bass, right? And a normal mixer would do that. They destroyed a lot of my mixes. That sucks. Sorry, Traxxas. It can happen if the intention is not right, if the wrong person is doing it, and I'm saying the wrong person for your music, that can happen. And if then there's no communication, then that's the end. I get it. On the other hand, if you send somebody a mix who is officially good at what they're doing, right? They have mixed records and they theoretically are good at it doing. A self-respecting mixer should always send you something that is arguably good. Arguably, I'm not saying you like it. Again, you might hate it, but on some level, it is musically impressive, sonically good. It doesn't have to be always good. There are plenty of hit songs that don't sound that great, but like there must be something to it where you go like, oh shit, I see what he's doing, but that's just not it. That's a fair, that's creatively a fair response, you know. And that's where it comes. That's just like telling whatever Jeff Beck he played something and you didn't like what he played. It doesn't make him a bad player. It's just he creatively saw it differently today. Now, the important part is what do you do next? Will you address the client, the client's concern? Will you go like, hey, let me listen again? Oh, I see. Yeah, I went off the rails with that one. But a professional mixer will theoretically shouldn't you send you something that is just crap? Well, I don't know. I try not to do that. Okay. Um, what else we got here? Do not high pass. Well, I high pass a lot. And there's different ways of high passing, and I'm not gonna get into that today, but there are reasons why people say to not high pass, and there's other reasons why they do, and what kind of high pass they use and why. And I have specific thoughts about that I'm not gonna share today. Haha. But I have no problems with high pass in overall speaking. Though I do not high pass on the Master Fader, if that is interesting to you. I do not. Anyway, what comes first, or EQ or conversion? Okay, just kidding. Well, I don't know either. It's a different sound. That's the answer on that. Let me go back. When do bass then three versions? Yeah, cool. That's cool. What Sam says here with the bass tracks. I would love to do multiple versions. Unfortunately, it normally doesn't. It takes too much time. If Here's the thing, and this is maybe a tip or inside tip. If I really feel in the mix that something was totally wrong in the rough mix, and that might be I have to mute a part, or it was just so oddly out of shit that I was like, I don't know why this is happening here. I would probably on mix one send a mix one and mix one A, and I would say, hey, this is mix one in this particular thing. I kept it close to your rough mix, this one thing that I'm hating. And here's 1A, and I just muted it, or here's a quick edit, just in case you like it, and don't kill me, just let me know you didn't like it, and that's cool too. That's the way to deal with a client, and that's totally fair. If you just say, hey, here's the version how it's better, then you could run immediately into like, well, but I don't agree with that. And in the whole term of like it's easier to show somebody than talk to somebody about stuff, just do that, and they will actually go like, oh, that's super cool. Thanks for letting me in on that thought process. I'd still disagree, but I appreciate you taking the time. So that's, like, be a person, make sure that you show people that you love mixing records as much as they're making records, and that you are in a little bit in awe of what they created. Even if it's not the greatest song ever made, you've been chosen to mix the song for them. I'm like, the least you can do, let's say it's a terrible song, at least make it the best sounding terrible song you can. That's the gig. They will appreciate that.
The best sounding terrible song. I love it.
I mean, what you gonna do? My job is not to rewrite it. Actually, my job is not even to judge it. It's just to get it done, and that's fair.
Yeah. Very, very much so. Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah,
It's absolutely amazing. So you've been going through a lot of the questions.
I've gone back and forth. Yeah, we did some cool stuff here, I think. I mean, if there's any about that whole thing, like what you not like about your mixer, right? I wish the whole ecosystem that includes the label, the manager, the artist, the producer, and the mixer, that everybody would be open at all places for full creativity and not mad at the next person. Like you're like, hey, you distort these drums. I hate that. Or how about, hey, you distort these drums? I don't quite want to go for it. Let's try something different. That will get us to a better place. Unfortunately, that will never quite happen. People will not like you for doing some creative things that they didn't expect. And the most important thing is what you're going to do next. The answer to me most of the time is like, All right, cool. What do you want? All right, let's explore that. And maybe they're right, you know that? Like maybe they're right. Because like, even as a mixer, we're not just like the person who can save a record at all times and make it better at all times. We we are the people who are facilitators on this very important, almost final step. And if everybody plays with us, then it can be beautiful.
Marvelous, marvelous. Well, this has been a lot of fun, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I've really, really enjoyed this. It's been a good couple of hours of musical mayhem. Is there any burning desire questions from anybody while we have the great Ricky Ricardo here?
Well, there's 112 more uh, people watching, which is thank you for hanging out. We really appreciate that because actually,
Amazing.
you see, I'm getting fired up. I actually do like talking about this. I do like giving
I
master
love it
classes.
when you do. You have been called one of our best mentors by many people. When the courses get edited, everybody that edits your course, Eric will attest this, always says Richard goes into the most detail of anybody.
Is that true? All right. Well, thank you, Eric. You're gonna get a beer or something.
Don't tempt Eric with beer. Come on,
What?
you know how he is.
I
He's
actually
gonna be like,
don't.
he's gonna be, oh, I couldn't
Uh,
drive. Oh, I got drunk. Uh,
Would you say restriction or
I
availability
was
of
reading that. Yeah, that's a
what
good
do you mean by
question.
availability? I mean restriction. I don't know what that means.
Well,
Uh,
I think maybe they're saying like you have not enough choices, or or too many choices. What's better to try and take a couple of tracks and make them sound more interesting, or take 10 tracks and try and you know what I mean?
yeah. It's an interesting question. As a as a creative person and maybe an artist, I would say restriction is helpful and will give you a palette for your album. For instance, hey, I only have the roads, so all of a sudden all 10 songs have the roads on it. Cool. That's a restriction that might be powerful. As a service provider, as such as myself, at least need all the options. That doesn't mean I will explore them all. Obviously, I have templates, and by templates, I will always say this: a template to me is not a thing where you plug in files and a mix comes out. That's terrible. But it's just routing processes. They are things that I would not want to be without. And in my case, because you talked about this, what our base is a good one, but to me, the one I really wouldn't want to live without is probably auto align.
Hmm.
Um, Auto align is making a huge impact without with less engineering necessary. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say, like, I as a professional, I want all the options that I can, and I want to be able to pivot. Like, for instance, if I had something created that you don't like, I need all the tools in order for me to go from my version to whatever you might like better. I don't. I want to not end up at a wall ever. So creatively speaking, you're right. As a job description of what I do, it would be sad to be at a limitation.
Okay,
Oh,
fantastic.
no, so about the Prince stuff. Oh, cool. No, Ian Boxell was the engineer for Prince until the day before I got to be the engineer. That's how it happens. One person moves out, and I don't actually know how it happened or what happened, like if he left or he got left. But the next day I had the gig, and that's right. Then I did the Lotus Flower album. Yeah, my favorite island microphone. I don't record much anymore, but the microphone I do carry with me at all points is the Corby multiple capsule systems, and I have a C800, C12, 47, 67, and 251 capsule. So basically anything. um, Prince does like his gains up full. Yep, he also likes to clip every digital device that he can find. Trackpad, mouse, or trackball. I mean, obviously, because of the vintage feel, it has to be a trackball. This one, I probably should get an affiliate link for this one, but it's the Kensington Orbit, which I have literally 6 of them in case, and one just died and it has been replaced. This is my interface. This is my fretboard, so to speak, right? So it might as well be exactly what I want it to be. Um, that's good. I think now we kind of did it all, didn't we not? Maybe? I don't know.
I think so. I mean, I don't want to stop you. I'm loving you
I don't
answering
need to
these
stop,
questions.
but like I can. Is there
Been a
anything?
great. It's been a great a great couple of hours. You
Yeah.
know.
It's so to me, what's most important in the whole thing is like this whole idea that we're in an ecosystem of people that have done what we're doing for a long time before us. There's some new people that have done it less than us, but are now like the hottest people around because they know stuff and feel stuff, and obviously there's also business decisions in there and all that stuff that is important. Like it's great to be reminded that we're not doing this by ourselves. Actually, I can't. I have to mix somebody's songs, or I'm not even a mixer. So I'm actually super thankful to be in this system where, like, okay, so these 10 people think I am the shit. This other person will never send me a mix. Fair, because that's what creativity is, right? And to realize that we're like blessed to be making music all day long like this, and having people like Warren around who basically spreads information and collects information and lets me speak to you because we wouldn't have been connected otherwise. It's just a beautiful place to be. You should like step back and go like, yeah, there's hardships, there's like music is not a easy life, but holy shit, we're doing it, right? And you're here to collect knowledge, connect knowledge which you can decide how some of it is bullshit, some of it is helps you, and it will solidify your own little place in this world. I think it's super super beautiful to be here.
Great. Okay. Well, I absolutely love this. Eric, you got all of the last winners. Is that correct? And what and who won? Because I was out of the room when he.
I won. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
you won.
I won. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks everyone. This has been absolutely superb. Special ultra mega thanks to Mr. Sir Richard Furch, MBE, OBE,
Soon.
QED,
We'll put in a word.
1, 2, 3.
That's funny.
Thank you, my friend. I really, really appreciate it. We should do these more often. These are a lot of fun.
Yeah, anytime. I'm here.
Yep. There's definitely no gatekeeping here. No, none whatsoever. Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Congratulations to everybody that won. If you haven't already, please get the course, which Eric is now going to put the link to. I see there's one up back, a few up there. Please get Richard's course. And we'll do a lot more with him because he's truly wonderful. Richard, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, tschüss, ciao, goodbye.
Bye.